Because she's using my.
Oh, okay. Changes. Okay, so you can continue, yeah.
Next paragraph. A gist of their basic assumptions is that science is the sole authentic knowledge, that this knowledge pertains only to phenomena, that this knowledge, including the basic statements and general conclusions of the science and philosophy derived from it, is peculiar to a particular age and may change in another age, that scientific statements must affirm only what is observed and confirmed by scientists. That what should be accepted are theories only that can be reduced to sensational elements, even though such theories might involve ideas pertaining to domains beyond the empirical spheres of experience. That universality should not be attributed to scientific formulas, nor should objects defined by universality be described as reality beyond what is observed. That the content of knowledge is a combination of realism, idealism, and pragmatism, that these three aspects of cognition together represent the foundation of the philosophy of science, that cognition is subjective, arbitrary, and conventional, and that in the relationship between the logical structure of knowledge and the empirical content of knowledge, the primacy of logic is affirmed, that mathematical theory is not a descriptive science making statements about the structure and processes of nature, and that it is in fact a logical theory, that since logic is indispensable to science, the role of language and logical statements in describing the structure and processes of nature is paramount, that truth and falsehood are properties of belief. Belief in the next page is that.
Oh, how do I? There.
Okay. Belief in the sense of intellectual acceptance as true or existing of any statement or proposition dependent upon the relations of belief of facts, that facts are neutral as far as truth and falsehood are concerned. They just are.
Okay, so when I was doing research for PhD, right, this is my main book because I'm doing philosophy of science. So when you see this thing here, of course, you're just like, oh, whatever. It's just all like so long and like tied up together. But actually, this is the place that I need to look carefully. So what happened is that it's like a long chain of statements that Prof. al-Attas has here. So you have to look at the semicolon and actually write them all out. Write them all out and take time to think about each one of them, and each one of them can be a whole essay. So let's go over them. If you have the himma, that the strong motivation, please write them each one as a separate statement. Number one, science is the sole authentic knowledge. Number two, this knowledge pertains only to phenomena. This knowledge, including the basic statements and general conclusions of the science and philosophy derived from it, is peculiar, special just to a particular age. They may change in another age. Scientific statements must affirm only what is observed and confirmed by scientists. What should be accepted are theories only that can be reduced to sensational elements or sensory perceptions, even though such theories might involve ideas pertaining to domains beyond the empirical spheres of experience. Universality should not be attributed to scientific formulas, nor should objects defined by universality be described as reality beyond what is observed. The content of knowledge is a combination of realism, idealism, and pragmatism. These three aspects of cognition, realism, idealism, and pragmatism together represent the foundation of the philosophy of science. There, even there is like the center of the book. These three are the center of are the foundation of philosophy of science. Cognition is subjective, arbitrary, and conventional. And that in the relationship between the logical structure, I think this is already the next one here, even though there's no semicolon there, there's a comma. But yeah, I think for my brain, I have to start over with that one because Prof. Al-Attas has everything so tightly everywhere in his writing. In the relationship between the logical structure of knowledge and the empirical content of knowledge, the primacy of logic is affirmed. Mathematical theory is not a descriptive science, making statements about structure and processes of nature. It is a logical theory. Since logic is indispensable to science, the role of language and logical systems in describing the structure and processes of nature is paramount. Okay, we have the expert in language here, Sister Nabila. She's doing her thesis on language, right? Or history of.
History. Language was my degree.
So you're not going to put your language expertise into your current thesis?
I am.
Inshallah. I hope this will be beneficial for you.
Inshallah.
So language is very, very important in philosophy of science, it turns out. It comes as a shock for me because it's a manufacturing of that theory. So you need a language, is very important. So anyway, since logic is indispensable to science, the role of language, yeah, this is what he's saying. The role of language and logical systems in describing the structure and processes of nature is paramount. That, okay, following something new now. Truth and falsehood are properties of belief. Belief in the sense of intellectual acceptance as true or existing of any statement or proposition, dependent upon the relation of belief to facts. So if something is fact, you believe it. It's a fact. But facts are neutral as far as truth and falsehood are concerned. They just are. Facts are something you make with your language. You can make a statement. It doesn't have to be true. So is there any comments on this first before we go into it? Yeah, Farah. No. I cannot hear you in here.
Hello.
Yes.
There are many items here. I just want to ask about the number 7. The mathematical theory is not a descriptive science, making statements about the structure and processes of nature. I think I just want to reflect that when I was doing my undergrad, the math equation is a description of process and the structure. So, for example, the math equation will describe the thermodynamics, and you kind of imagine what exactly is happening in nature with the mathematical equation. So he's saying that you should not do that. You should not do that. Is he saying that you shouldn't not do that or did it? Yeah.
Shouldn't describe it. I'm so sorry. What happened is when you're online, you think you're really meeting each other, right? But it's actually not. It's a virtual world. So Sister Farah is lagging online by a second. So I really had a hard time. Her voice came first here because she's with me right now. And then a second later, the voice came here. So, all right. So any other questions relating to this?
Yeah, I want to echo on what Sister Farah said just now about mathematical as a descriptive. It's it's a logical theory, kan?
Just the question. Can you write the question on the chat? Is it there? Yeah, continue. Sorry, I just. Ask you to write.
Because my husband punya colleague ada anak buah, basically he's studying astrophysics. So astrophysics is the study of astronomical objects through the principle of physics kan. All of this, everything lah pasal black holes, dark matter, all the things that we cannot grasp, it's out there kan, external. But actually what he actually does, what we think, macam it reminds me of Disney, what we think they do, what they actually do is actually they do a lot of calculations, one after another calculations with mathematics. And it's mind-boggling to think that, because you are just supposed to be wondering about Allah punya kebesaran kan, and you are just calculating and trying to like sort of say, oh, this is how he does it. This basic science, basic math. Not like that, all right.
Yeah, I also want to add, it's not only for something that is not cannot be grasped, like of course space is like so far, but sometimes something that is can be measured and sort of like validated the equation in the actual physical form in the lab, or but it's still represented in an equation. So what is al-Attas contesting? I was just trying to.
Okay. Sorry. I'm afraid if I cough, the echo is so bad. Any other thing before that? Should we just jump to that one that's down here? So up there's a lot of other things. Okay, we'll just hold that one first, yeah? But that's good. That means everyone can really see what Prof. al-Attas is saying here, and it really makes sense. Okay, so let's go to the top one. Knowledge pertains, basic assumptions that science is the sole authentic knowledge. This is called scientism. Scientism is an ideology that results from science. So because we believe in science so much, then, everything, we put down others, like, like the vaccine case, we have a big camp, fighting one another, because once a group dare to say, I don't want vaccine, then the other group, has already subscribed to science in such a way that this cannot go wrong. Science, this, what are you talking about? What negative things, so then this looking down on one another and forming groups, because this is becoming like a presupposition, like a basic belief. It's no longer cognitive, it's more like internalized as a belief system. So scientism scientism means that how strong science is in our mind, our perception, our daily life, like a religion to some people. So number two, knowledge pertains only to phenomena. So this means things that are out there that we can see. So obviously in the past, the atom you cannot see, the blood veins inside your cells, we cannot see those things. So they were not accepted in science. They were part of metaphysics, because physical is the thing you can grasp with your sensory perceptions. And meta means everything around it, whatever's around it. If in religion you want to say God or angels or shaitan, all those are metaphysics. They are not physical, cannot be grasped, and similarly, atoms and all that. So the next one, this knowledge, including the basic statements and general conclusion of the science and philosophy derived from it, is peculiar to a particular age. So Prof. al-Attas is concerned with this, right? We mentioned that the interpretation, statement, theories, these are the products of science that we use in our textbooks. Our children learn them. So these things are not meant to be static. So science accept this as their presupposition. So this is something they expect. They have to change. So it's just for this age, like this. In the past, the ancient Greeks were scientists in their own way. That's their time. That's already finished. Then next, scientific statement must affirm only what is observed and confirmed by scientists. So this is called the scientific convention, or the scientific community comes out of this. So if I see something, I'm not a scientist, so it doesn't count. So you must be a scientist. And then they also ranks among the scientists. So a lot of people say in the third world, the scientists are just like technicians. So they produce scientific, when they do scientific research, then they publish in journals. Their kind of publications are just, peripheral, just like a little piece to the missing big impression that the Cambridge and Oxford, Harvard, MIT professors are doing. So, but they want some people to do that dirty job. So, hey, so this is perfect. The third world country scientists are doing this, and so they can get their what do you call KPI, right? Suddenly I'm missing up so they can get their points to get promoted to become professor in their countries. So that's unfortunate things that's happening. So they have their, like a church, the science church, or the scientific society, have their leaders and all the little people, and we are outsiders. I mean, the next one, what should be accepted are theories only that can be reduced to sensational elements. So the word reduce here is very important because it gives rise to the ideology of reductionism. So science practice this reductionism, whereby we only look at phenomenal things you can touch, again, those sensational empirical elements. You don't look at things like angels and things that you cannot see and cannot measure. Even though such theories might involve ideas pertaining to domains beyond the empirical spheres of experience. So science, philosophy of science has also went through some controversy before the atom and germs are not seen. So they were considered something science cannot discuss outside the realm, the domain of science. But once you have the microscope and the telescope, then science, philosophy of science changes, and they had to go through some internal conflict first before they can accept, just like any change in, in society or in mind. So this is a shift that happened. So atoms and germs become something that can be measured also. So the idea of the physical, metaphysical also changes. So it's a transformation from a philosophy of science school called the Vienna Circle to analytical philosophy. There's so many different schools and positions that they have. So the next one says, universality should not be attributed to scientific formula. So now we're coming into that mathematical discussion. Okay, so we know formula is mathematical formula, but it started off with logic. So Aristotle is the guru, big guru who started, logic and teaching about, what do you call it? Physics too, yeah, but the special logic that we use for analogy, the word for it. No, it escapes me. So, anyway, so logic then is learned by Ibn Sina, and Ibn Sina has actually improved on Aristotelian logic. And after that, logic is also important in the Islamic tradition. In the beginning, there was a lot of internal feuds between Muslim scholars because, of course, obviously these people, when Islam spread to all the non-Muslim areas like Syria then and Persian Sassanid Empire, the Byzantine, they are all non-Muslims, but some people among the Muslims were learning from the great scholars who are their religious leaders, like the Rahib and all that. They are the keepers of their ancient knowledge. So they are learning from priests, and among the things that they were keeping was this Aristotelian philosophy that include logic and all that. So these Muslim scholars like Ibn Sina, Al-Farabi, Al-Kindi, the first one is Al-Kindi, is the first Arab that studied with them. And they tried to Islamize, but their Islamization was not that great. So people accused them of kufr, of, all kind of, that they are committing disbelief in their writing. But over time, we see that logic is important because they also engage in dialogue with the non-Muslims, because now they are the leader that conquered these lands. and they don't force them to become Muslims. They protect it. You know, the Christians have their own areas, the Jews have their own areas. They take care of their people, but the leaders talk to each other and discuss religion. So they look at their arguments. That these Christians have philosophical arguments about Trinity, for instance. So it was really amazing for them. It's like, wow, okay. They have logic, like logical statements. They say because of this, and then this follows. Therefore, this is undeniably true, the truth. So these things, then the Muslims take it, and over time they form the Kalam tradition, where this logic is used in, the argument among Mu'tazila and the Ahlul Sunnah, the Jahmiyyah. There's a lot of groups, the Shia, that argue that the Quran is created. There's all kinds of internal conflict in belief, and so they use that logic. So over time, that logic become more Islamized and developed, and it goes into fiqh also. The Islamic jurisprudence also used, to form qiyas, analogy. So there is very much, value, a lot of value that they got from that interaction with the non-Muslims and getting their philosophical ideas. So that logic over time is plugged in with symbols in numbers and, division signs and equal signs and the signs for universal, which means every or all and every has its own logic sign. Or some, okay, let's say some people believe that the sun is orange. One person, I'm not good at logic. Actually, I cannot come up with one that makes sense. Okay, some say the sun comes from the east. Everyone says the sun comes from the east. Therefore, the sun really comes from, rise from the east. Let's say it's really bad. I'm sorry. I haven't eaten. So, this is like the sum and all, or 1%. This is part of logic that. So from there, you can put mathematics to make a statement that's similar to that, and you can plug in the numbers. So we'll go to the mathematics and logic more further, but I think suddenly, okay, what is it? The universality, okay. Universality means everyone accepts it. So there's two kinds of logic in the modern times right now. One is induction, one is deduction. Deduction is when something is already agreed upon by everyone. So everyone says that there is no unicorn. So that is universal. It's a universal statement. Everyone have not seen a unicorn. So when you use a logical symbol, that will be a zero, like zero, people have seen. So that becomes a universal statement because it's agreed. It's either no one has seen a unicorn or everyone has eaten food once a day. Okay, that is, no one can deny that. It's universal. So universal means that it's either no one did it or everyone did it. It's universal. The opposite of that is particular or khusus or khas. That means only one specific situation. So it says that if something that is agreed upon by everyone, it should only be considered really happen in the place where it happened. Now, this is my interpretation of what al-Attas is saying, and I couldn't get confirmation. So for example, in physics, you have the Newtonian physics, which is very related to, the gravity on Earth and, events that happen on planet Earth. But when Einstein comes in, his idea is more related to, the interplanetary, how outside of Earth, things are not really the same. So if you have the formula for physics on Earth, you cannot assume that on Mars it's going to be the same. So it's not universal, but it's universal to your place. So far, physics is okay. Is that all right? Any other question to clarify or things to say? No? Then I will continue. So objects that is defined by universality shouldn't be described as reality beyond what is observed. The content of knowledge is a combination of realism, idealism, and pragmatism. Okay, this one, I don't know if I explained before the difference between Plato's idea and Aristotle. So Plato and his teacher Socrates, they believe that the physical, the outer things we see here are not real. The only real thing is the essence of everything. So like I have mentioned before, I think the idea of a pencil. So there are many kind of pencils that we have, red pencils or even feather ink or a marker. That's all kind of pencil. But the idea of pencil with its function to write, that's in our mind. So that is more real for them. That's the idea rises into the word ideal, idea, the ide in the Greek. So the ideal is just what forms in your mind, but that is the origin, that is the true thing. And then you make them come out in the world as more concrete objects. So that will be realism. So Aristotle only look at things as already out there, only the real thing. He says this, we need to expand knowledge by just studying these things, their properties, what we see, what we can grasp. So that's his focus. He left his teacher's idea about his teacher's way regarding idealism being more real, more important, more existing than the things that we have out there that we see. Like that philosopher Descartes, he was wondering, I think, therefore I am. I'm out here in this world. Am I real? Or perhaps I am not. Perhaps I'm just, the real me is the one that's inside the mind. That my mind is more real than my body. My body, is not, is it really true, this world that we see each other, but actually we exist or not by being here in this world? Maybe we exist more in each other's mind. Because when you think of something, that thing remains in your mind. So if you've seen something, you've seen a piece of cake and someone take away that cake, then the cake is still in your mind. It's very fresh in your mind, still the same thing. So your mind keeps it forever. Even though in physical, that thing's already gone. So that's why there's this question. But in Islam, it's a combination of both. We don't take that this world is nothing. In Hinduism, there is this Maya. The word Maya means that the word virtual that we use now is Maya, right? So Maya is like our online here. You're not real there. I'm not real to you. It's just a picture. It turns out when Farah was talking in real life here, her voice came later over there in your world, the virtual world. But so they are thinking that even the one right here is not real enough. So there's another real, more real. That is the subject of ontology. In philosophy, that is ontology, whether something is really existing. Actually, you need the belief in God to put that in perspective. So the real thing is the thing that is in the mind of God. When Allah says kun fayakun, be and it is, he already has something in his mind. So when he says now come into that physical world, kun, be. So that is when, then it becomes that world. So in that sense, that is not so real. The one that's real is with God in his mind. So idealism, focus on that the fact that the physical is not real, and realism focus on what's out here. Let's just study that. And pragmatism solve that problem, because pragmatism was introduced in America, like John Dewey and those kind of philosophers, where you just want to see results. So it doesn't matter this argument. Let's just, if you do experiment and can give us new knowledge, just go for it. And this arises because of that atom thing. Once they have microscope and telescope, then they discovered that these things are real and you can look at them. And while before they thought it's just something in their mind. Some people can imagine things, but they can't prove it. So now they can prove that. So that's a new development. Anything? Question? Okay, so moving on. I guess time is finished now. Can we take 15 minutes more? Oh, anyone has to leave? Everyone's quiet. Okay.
Good. Please continue.
Okay, thank you, Nabil. Okay, so no should object, right? And then the universality should not be attributed to scientific formulas. I skipped that. Okay, so when you have a formula, it's not true for all. It's just true for your location, your locality. And then the content of knowledge is combination, and these three aspects is the foundation. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind to read more on realism, idealism, pragmatism. Cognition is subjective, arbitrary, and conventional. So you want to depend on your mind to make decision, but then each one of us is different. It's subjective and arbitrary. So it's not really, we are not very just individual, like Ustazah Juliana would know. So we make decisions sometimes subjectively, arbitrarily, and conventional is when we come together, we follow our society, like the way our language developed now. In Malay language, for instance, you know, the word gila does not mean crazy anymore. It means so good, you know, sedap gila. So that's the convention of society. So we allow that. So in Islam, we always have our ulama are the one that takes care of these things. Our ulama always, you know, they always sound like they so, you know, saying ni tak boleh, tu tak boleh, don't do that, don't do this, because they are, you know, always watching that limit. Don't let society just decide. Now this changes because that's what happened in other religions, always evolving with what society think is right, what it should be, following the age, the period that we're living in. So in the relationship between the logical structure of knowledge and the empirical content of knowledge, the primacy of logic is affirmed. Okay, so this is the part where you guys are asking question about math. So the math starts from logic. So you have empirical content means you do experiment. You look at the, let's say, iodine, you know, you to check kanji, carbohydrate, right? So you change the color change. So you note the color change. And this is empirical. So what you can see. So now you want to write that result. So you have to follow logic in writing such a result, for instance. So there is a relationship between what you observe and then how you would word it. And it has to follow logic in order to be rational, to follow the rational knowledge. The primacy of logic is affirmed. So to view things, not, you know, with emotion, you see, oh, so excited to see the change color, you know, for instance. I mean, there are other things, of course, when you want the result as a scientist, you have to write your journals, you know, you have to write so many papers. You have a hypothesis that this will turn this color and you want to see it change that color. Okay, so that's very dangerous. So that's why logic is important, that you just write based on logic, not based on your feelings or you know. So these are good things about science. Mathematical theory is not a descriptive science, meaning you don't use math to describe. Making statements about the structure and processes of nature. So if it's not described, what is it? It's actually to prescribe. So sometimes scientists have so much power that, you know, they just say, okay, this is how it works. I say so. And that happens with, you know, string theory and all this explanation, because now we have so many to explain about the universe. We have so many models of how the universe works because they are prescribing. They're not describing science. They're not telling it as it is true or not, but they are saying, this is how I see it. It makes sense. I'm going to prove to you with mathematics. I'm going to show you the formula. You plug it in with this measurement, it's going to be equal to. So this is how, like astrophysics, you said, theoretical physics, they need a mathematician to do this. Since logic is indispensable to science, the role of language and logical systems in describing the structure and processes of nature is paramount. So logic gives rise to mathematics, as I said. And how does mathematics happen to be right? Okay, this one is a research that is not complete yet. Because numbers, from what I read from reading Said Hossein Nas, Said Hossein Nas is a Shia Iranian American philosopher. So he studies a lot into the previous Islamic scientists and philosophers, and they come from different background that's not following Ahlul Sunnah. So sometimes you have the Ismaili scientist called Ikhwan as-Safa, or the Brethren of Purity. They are really into numbers. So they think numbers is not just something ordinary, but it has like a real existence. So in fact, it's easy to see that in some sense. In the basic sense, when you say number two, what is number two? Number two is just a symbol. Two is not anything. Two is only something when you have two objects in your mind. If you say infinity, it is not anything. It has a symbol, but what is it? You can't even say, I can count infinity. And infinity is really used too much, but it just means that you don't know. It's endless. But they make it seem like, well, anyway. So numbers is really something extraordinary. So it does have like a real existence. If you see the digital world, is what consists of, it's only 0 and 1. So it is something special, and no scientists are going into this. They just, because it's so metaphysical actually. But so that perhaps has some clues to how a lot of this formula can deliver, the structure of phenomena that they see. Okay, so the last part is, I should read from the bottom here. Truth and falsehood. Okay, so before that, the role of language and logical systems. So we see that math has importance here to prove something, and then you have to word that in language. So you word that using, logical statements. So it's up to them how they word it. So Muslim scholars, teachers, and parents have to see that this enterprise of science, how they, the theory that they bring forth, whether it's true or not. So this is what we're talking about, truth and falsehood. Truth and falsehood are something that we believe intellectually. So we have to think about it rationally. Or maybe if we are good in math, then we do the math. So we say, okay, true. This is true statement. But then if someone says something is a fact, that person is, you think that thing is really true, but the fact is just a statement that's made to look like it's the truth. When you say that in science, the famous one is a triangle. What is a triangle? Yeah, come again? 3 lines or 3 sides. So it's a shape with 3 sides. But that's what, or 3 angles, right? But that's what you already said, triangle. It's not saying anything new. It's not telling you anything. It's just, this is science. It makes a fact. Triangle is a shape with 3 sides and 3 angles. But you already said that because tri is 3 and angle is angle. So you manufacture a fact. So this is, not necessarily bad. Just Prof. Al-Attas is just exposing how science thinks, how science produces results so that Muslim scholars can really understand and the public don't just fall into scientism and just simply think, science produces it. That means no question, we have to take it. We have to know how it's done. So I think I would have to stop here, but please have a discussion. I can stop sharing. Yeah, so you guys, we have to go then. If there's no question or discussion, then I leave it to Sister Atika. I will stop recording now if there's no question.